I want to start with a promise. Your children are never going to walk down the aisle in nappies and diapers. They will all get there. But how will they get there? Well, that's what today's episode is all about. In this episode of Sense by Meg Faure, I am taking you through everything I know about potty training, the science, the sensory personalities, and a practical step-by-step plan that works within 10 days. This is what you're going to walk away with. First of all, we are going to talk about why your baby's sensory personality changes everything about how you potty train. A social butterfly needs a completely different approach to a sensitive baby. And getting this wrong is why many parents feel like they're failing. Then we talk about the golden window. Like, is there an ideal age when you can potty train your baby? And if so, what is that? And we're going to talk about a common mistake that makes the whole process a whole lot harder. Then thirdly, we're going to talk about the single most important thing that you need to do to set up in your home before you begin. And weirdly, it has nothing to do with the potty itself. And then finally, of course, we go into a day-by-day plan, a prep week, and then a potty training week that takes the guesswork completely out of it. No stress, no punishment, no drama, just a clear, simple path to being nappy-free. So whether you're just starting to wonder whether or not your toddler is ready, or you've tried before and haven't stuck with it, this episode is going to give you the confidence and a roadmap to do this in a way that really works for your baby.
Welcome to Sense by Meg Faure, where we make sense of the science and art of parenting. Parenting is grey, gritty, and beautiful all at once. And my life's work as a healthcare professional is helping parents feel more confident in a season that can feel really overwhelming. In each episode, we share honest conversations with real mums, dive into the science with experts, and simply make sense of it all in practical ways. This is your space. You're not alone, you're held. So let's unpack the journey of a lifetime with sense.
Right, so we are going to get into the very interesting topic of potty training. And I think for many parents, it is one of those things similar to weaning in some ways, that this is such a new phase and stage of development that you feel a little bit anxious about whether or not you can actually do this. And I can tell you categorically that none of your babies are going to walk down the aisle with nappies on. And so all babies do transition out of it, but they do it very differently. And so what we're going to talk about today is what are those differences between how little ones like to potty train? What is the science behind how you potty train little ones? And then also what you can do, like practical steps to get your little one potty trained. So today we are going to be looking at how to get your little one out of nappies and diapers. All right. So just like everything that I ever speak about, I always talk about how little ones are super different. And some of them have got, they've all got different sensory personalities. And if we understand how they are as individuals, we're able to potty train them a whole lot easier. So we're going to dip straight in there, and then we're going to go on to the science of potty training. So first of all, when we talk about sensory personalities, most of you will probably know or have heard, and particularly in my books, Baby Sense and Weaning Sense, we talk about the sensory personalities, and we talk about the way that sensory information is taken into the brain, how it is processed, and how our individual brains actually process that information. Now, for all of us, sensory information comes in through 8 senses, which I think when we were in high school or in primary school, we learned about the 5 senses, which is, of course, the sense of touch, sight, smell, taste, and hearing. So those are your 5 senses. And then you've got 3 additional senses: your sense of balance, so knowing whether or not you are upright, falling over, having balance reactions. And you can imagine that that'll be important for potty training because you've got to be able to sit on a potty or a toilet. Then the sense of body position, where is my body in space? And then very importantly for potty training, interoception, which is the information, the sensory information that comes from your internal organs, like do I need to go to the toilet, as an example. So these 8 senses come into all of our brains at any given moment. You're taking this in absolutely all the time. In fact, if I said to you now, your sense of touch is working, can you feel your shirt on your back? Now you can suddenly feel it, where before you'd managed to kind of habituate it out. But we've all got these senses going on all the time. Now, there are 2 different ways that we all process this sensory information. Some of us are hypersensitive to it, and we have what are called low filters for sensory information. So we actually feel, perceive, hear much more than the average person does because we are more sensitive. And then you've got those who are much less sensitive, and lots can be going on in their world without them actually noticing it. Now, these two kind of, it runs on a continuum. Some of us are much more sensitive, some of us are much less sensitive. But within these two buckets, we get two different types of sensory personalities. So if you've got a very high filter, in other words, a lot can be going on in your world and you don't really perceive it, you will fall into one of two types of sensory personalities, or your baby will fall into one of two sensory personalities. The one is that they may be a social butterfly. So a social butterfly, lots is going on in their world. They don't necessarily perceive it when they're little, and particularly in the first 3 months, but then they wake up to the fact that actually this world is very interesting. And in fact, it's more interesting than my sensory information tells me. And so if I seek sensory information, I will get more, and they start to get wired for more and more stimulation and more social engagement. So those babies are called our social butterflies. And you will know that you have got a social butterfly because they are very social. They engage with people. They smile at everybody as you walk through the shops. They're very, very social little ones, and they can actually be quite exhausting. Also on the high filter side of things are the settled babies. Now, these little ones, the whole world goes on around them. They don't necessarily always notice what's going on around them in their world. And so they are very, very, very settled babies. They tend to be super laid back. They tend to be your babies who sleep well, feed well. They're very, very laid back and are fairly unaware of what goes on in their world. So those are your high filter babies. On the other side, we've got our low filter babies. These are our more sensitive babies. So the one type of personality there is your sensitive baby. They are super sensitive to everything that goes on in their world. Can be a lot more fussy. And then, of course, you've got your slow to warm up. And they're also sensitive, takes a bit of time, and then they warm up. All right. So let's talk a little bit about how those sensory personalities relate to potty training. And if you don't know what your baby's sensory personality is, do go and do the sensory personality course inside the Parent Sense app, because then you will learn what your sensory personality your baby is, and you'll actually get a booklet on how to manage them well as well. All right, so let's talk about this settled baby. Let's start down there, settled baby. So remember, these little ones are super laid back. And the social butterfly as well. We'll actually talk about them, these high filter babies, in one bucket. They tend to have much lower awareness of what's going on, and they don't register everything that's going on in the world. So what do you think that will mean for potty training? Well, of course, what that means for potty training is that they're much more prone to accidents, and it can take a little longer to potty train them. And that's because they don't even notice that they need to go to the toilet, A, and B, for our social butterflies, they're actually too busy to want to go to the toilet or to the potty. And so they tend to have these little accidents. They also are the little ones who may have slightly low tone. And so when they're sitting on a potty, they might be the ones who topple off. So you've got to be there for them. And they're also the little ones that as they get into the later toddler years, they may actually want a nappy always to be put on for poos. Now, the reason why these little ones get fixated with that is that they need to have a lot of pressure and proprioception around their waist area to actually know what's going on, so that they can effectively go to the toilet and know how to push out. So when they have a nappy on, they know how to push, and that makes a difference for them. So a few little tips for these high filter babies. Well, the first thing is that you probably want to schedule their potty time. So set a clock, because they're not going to watch their signals and they're not going to tell you when they need to go to the toilet necessarily. And so you're going to want to do it by the clock. So every 40 minutes, you might say, right, we're going to just quickly check, especially when you're potty training, check that you don't need to go to the toilet, because they are not giving you those signals. The other thing is that you can actually increase the alertness of these babies through play. Things like jumping on a trampoline, lots of activity. That tends to increase their alertness around their body and their sensitivity around their body. And that means that they will be more likely to actually feel those signals. For these little ones, watching TV and sitting in front of a sedentary activity is particularly problematic, because they don't get enough arousal going through their bodies, sensory stimulation going through their bodies. And so often their arousal level drops. They become more and more settled, or have a high and high filter, and so they really don't feel the signals. So try not to let these little ones watch too much TV or screen time. Then use language cues. Tell them, like, oh, look, you need to go to the toilet now. And when you give them these signals, it's really good for them, because they start to recognize that, oh, when I feel that thing, it means that. And so give them lots of language cues around when they need to go to the toilet. And then lots of time with nappy off completely. And we're going to talk about that again later, because when your nappy's off and you have a little accident, you are much more likely to actually notice it. All right, so that is your social butterfly and your settled baby, and some tips around potty training for them. Now let's talk about our slow to warm up and sensitive babies. Now remember, these little ones have got heightened awareness. Everything that goes on in their world, they know about. And so they really know when they need to go to the toilet. And they are generally the little ones who will tell you, oh, I need to wee, I need to poo. And they maybe even a little bit distressed by it. So they kind of really get those signals loud and clear. Often they're the little ones who might actually perceive pain when they are going to the toilet, and particularly for pooing, because it feels like there's a lot coming out through their body. And so even though it might not actually be painful, they kind of have this fear around whether or not this is going to be sore. Remember also that these little ones, because they are hypersensitive and hyper aware, they often have a lot of flight, fright, and fight going on. And so they tend to have high levels of arousal. And so they tend to not like new experiences, and this feels uneasy for them. So there might be a bit of anxiety around potty training. So a couple of tips for your more sensitive little ones. You can use a padded toilet seat is a really good idea, because it just makes it super comfortable. Very importantly, make sure that these little ones have got their feet on a surface, and you're going to see this is going to come up again and again today. So make sure they've got their little feet on a surface, not hanging. If they've got a sore bum, use wipes instead of toilet paper. And they might need to be a lot more calm and have a lot more proprioception just before they go onto the toilet. So making sure that everything is calm, reducing anxiety. Don't panic and say, oh, you need the toilet, let's go. Because when you do that, you increase the anxiety. So just be very calm around potty training time. And then they might also need increased time on the loo. So they like to take their time. They don't want to be rushed. So things like giving them a book to read on the loo, getting them relaxed is a good idea. All right. So that's a little bit about your sensory personalities and going to the toilet. Now we're going to talk about when you should potty train. So there's kind of three broad categories of age. The one is your very young baby. So that is potty training babies between 0 and 12 months. Okay. Now you might say, there's no ways my baby can be potty trained at that age. But if you're interested in it, and if you've got a little baby, you can actually go and look up elimination communication. And this is a way of actually watching your baby's signals actually from birth. And you actually catch the wheeze and the poos right from birth. And they can actually go through never having to use nappies. So if you're interested, it's called elimination communication. Go and look it up. And I did have an episode in my podcast, I think it was in season 2, on elimination communication. Then from 12 to 18 months, most little ones are actually starting to show the first signals of wanting to go to the loo. So they suddenly are a little bit interested. They might start pointing at their nappy, and you might think, oh, this is a good time to start. Now, personally, I did potty train my little ones at this age, but it is a little bit more of a challenge because they don't have great self-regulation, because that only develops a little later, behavioral regulation. And so it's a little bit more work that you have to do to help them to potty train, but it's certainly possible. And then there's the golden stage, which is the 18 to 30 month period, and that's the period in which we really do like to potty train. And then the fourth stage, so I said there were 3 stages, but there's actually a 4th stage, and that is after 30 months. And that I really don't recommend, because little ones who potty train after 30 months tend to really take a while, because they've got very used to nappies. They've been in their nappies for so much of their life. All right. So how do you know when your child is ready? So let's have a look at that. We're going to break these cues into 3 buckets: the physical, the cognitive, and the sensory.
Today's dose of sense is brought to you by ParentSense, the expert-based parenting app that gives you daily support from pregnancy to sleep, feeding, and daily routines. Take the guesswork out of parenting. Download ParentSense today and use the code SENSE50 for 50% off.
We're going to break these cues into 3 buckets: the physical, the cognitive, and the sensory. So on the physical side, you want your little one to be walking well, able to get on and off a potty or a toilet so that they've got some independence, able to sit on a potty with balance, okay, which is why that feedback from the vestibular system is so important. And then you start to watch for kind of little dry periods of maybe 2 hours, like if they have a midday sleep, they wake up dry. And so you're starting to watch these little dry patches, and they also start to just pull their nappy off at every instance that they possibly can. And then they're giving you all these physical signals that they really are ready to be able to potty train. The second bucket is, of course, your cognitive signals. So let's look at your cognitive signals. Your cognitive signals include communication. So even if it's just pointing or saying, I need to go to the toilet. So communication is one of your cognitive signals. And the other cognitive signals is that they're really interested in potty training. So they watch you potty train or watch you go to the toilet. They get the potty out. They're giving you all the signals that actually, I'm cognitively ready for this. I want to go ahead. And then on the sensory level, you're wanting them to show you that they've got an awareness of being wet. So they don't like their nappy on when they're wet. They immediately want to take it off. They may start to notice when they need to go. So they might actually stop playing. Even if they're not communicating with you, they kind of stop playing, think about it, and then they actually go to the toilet. Another sensory one is that they're able to actually hold their little wee in for a little bit. So they kind of look at you, they've got the sensory signal, and then they want to get to the toilet. And they can hold, they can knape, and they can hold in their little wee a little bit so they can get to the toilet. And then they also start to dislike the feeling of a wet nappy. So that's linked to that physical of trying to take their nappy off. All right, so those are your readiness cues. So we are now going to get onto fuss-free potty training. And I'm going to go through the principles, and then I'm going to give you a step-by-step way to do it within 7 days. So let's have a look. So first of all, we're going to look at that ideal window, which is kind of 18 to 24 months to start, and certainly potty training by 30 months. Second thing you're going to do is you're going to check your developmental criteria, which I've just mentioned. Then the third thing is you are going to choose a time when you can really be present. And this is important. If you've just had a second baby and your second baby is 2 weeks old, this is not a good time to potty train your toddler because there's a lot going on for them emotionally and you are super distracted. So try and find a time when you can be there. And I always love vacations and holidays and times away, weekends. Those are good times when you can really be focused. Your mind can be on them and you can co-regulate. So your head can be in their space and really focused on them. So it's important that you've got that mental space to do that. Then you're going to play a little bit of kind of watch and see with them. So they might watch you go to the toilet, or you might actually get a little dolly that does wheeze, and you're going to feed that dolly some water and then pop her on the toilet or on the potty. So your little one can start to see, okay, when we drink, when we go to the potty, then a wee happens. And then the last thing you're going to do is you're going to set up the space. And the setting up the space is very, very important for potty training. So what does a space look like for potty training? Well, I always get asked, where do we potty train? I do prefer to potty train in a bathroom or a toilet. So if you've got a downstairs loo or a guest loo that is near to your living space, that is ideal because you want to be able to quickly whisk from the kitchen into the bathroom. Many of you will ask, what about having a potty in the lounge or in the kitchen? There's no problem with that in principle, but I do think that associating the space with a quiet space where there's a little pile of books next to their potty and that it's a designated toilet space is a good idea. So you have a space. Second thing is I want you to have a happy potty. That must be something that your little one really likes. I particularly like little toilets that are low for them. So you can go and buy those little kind of standing toilets. Another nice thing is to have a seat size adjuster. So you just get a little seat, a soft padded seat that fits on top of your toilet that has bars on the side. And that's a great thing because they can sit up there, they can hold onto the bars, they can be on the toilet, and then they've got the seat reducer. So it makes the hole a little bit smaller so that they don't fall inside. That's a lovely idea. And then I also like the very stable potties. They've got a wide base at the bottom, obviously a top, and a nice seat on top. And those are fabulous. What isn't great are those very old-fashioned potties that are kind of a wobbly bowl with a very narrow rim that you wouldn't want to use. But any of those other potties are absolutely fine. And then the next thing I want you to make sure is that your child's feet can be flat on the floor. So I alluded to this when I spoke about the sensitive baby. They don't like their feet kind of swinging in midair. So what you want to do is you want to have some sort of way of their feet to be on the floor, which either means the potty has to be floor level so that their feet are on the floor, or if you've got a seat size reducer, so sitting up on top of a toilet seat, that you've actually got a step. And the reason is that you want their feet to be flat so that they feel stable, so that they can push against their feet if they're pushing out a poo, and that they don't have this insecurity that they're having to deal with, like balancing while at the same time they're trying to poo. You know, that's kind of, you know, like it's like multitasking, which isn't great for them. So that's the space you're going to set up. And then I want you to put a little pile of books next to the toilet, little magazines, whatever it is, something that they can have a look at while they're on the toilet, because we want it to be a relaxed time. And then you're going to have a reward jar. So that's a little jar that you put up on the top of the toilet or up on the shelf in the bathroom. And in there, I want you to have a whole lot of little rewards. So they can be those tiny little stickers, as long as your little one won't choke on them, or it can be a little figurine, or it can be a little activity. You take it out and you say, now, if when you're rewarding them, now mommy is going to spend 3 minutes in the garden with you, or whatever it is, so giving them either time rewards, little stickers, little things. And that reward jar will be something that when they get it right, maybe it's when they get it right 3 times, or when they get it right every single time, you're going to give them a little reward. Okay, let them know that this is a fabulous thing that they've done. All right, so now we've set the stage. We know when we're going to do it. We know that we're going to be in a good mental space. Now let's talk about how to do it. And we're going to break how we're going to do it into prep week and into potty train in 1 week. Okay, so let's start with prep week. So your prep week is a week where you can be home and where your little one's nappy can be off. So we prefer that your little one has time with their nappies off completely, which means that they're going to be oopsies and mistakes on the floor. So hopefully it could be in summer when your little one can actually wander outside, and it doesn't matter if they make little mistakes. But if it isn't like that, you're going to need to put down some little black bags in the lounge and in the kitchen, and just make sure that if they do have a little mistake, it's not a problem. Now, why do we want the nappy off? Well, the reason we want the nappy off is we want them to really feel what's happening. Now, modern nappies, going back 50 or more years, was absolutely fine. We didn't need a nappy off week because nappies were so uncomfortable that babies knew the minute they'd weed. Our fabulous nappies now don't allow us to know when we've weed because they wick that moisture away so quickly that your little one wees and there's no reaction or there's no outcome. Whereas when we have the nappy off, it runs down our legs, and you can even have a little pair of little panties on if you want to, instead of a nappy off completely. But they need to be able to have a mistake. And this is what you're trying to do. You're trying to associate the feeling of wanting to go with the action of weeing with the feeling afterwards. So they will stop in their tracks and know that they're about to wee. You'll notice it and quickly label it. Oh, you're going to wee-wee. The wee-wee will come. They will notice it then. And then you'll say, oh, that was a wee-wee. And so when they've got that whole sequence, they start to know that feeling results in that outcome. And make sure you are labeling the feeling and you're giving them an opportunity to feel it with their nappy off. You also would want to play with that Dolly. Remember the Dolly I spoke about who drinks the water and makes the wee-wee. And then you're going to reward the Dolly and say, oh, the Dolly's so clever. Let's put a little sticker on her hand. And we put a little sticker on the Dolly's hand. And so for about a week, you're kind of going into deep prep work. Okay, so we've set up the space. We've taken the nappy off. We're playing with the Dolly. We're doing the rewards for the Dolly. And suddenly there's a lot of fascination going on. So now it is time to potty train. So this is what you're going to do. So after you have wandered around for a few days without a nappy, and you can kind of give them 2 or 3 days without a nappy, you've given them the words, you are then going to start to say, right, we're going to go to the toilet. Now, what you're going to do on these days is, first of all, you are going to give them lots and lots and lots to drink. There must be a squeezy bottle of water available all the time so that they're always able to drink this water, because you're wanting to create lots and lots of urine, because you want lots of opportunity. The more that they do it in that first week, the more it becomes embedded in a neural pathway. So lots of water. And then you're going to set a timer for every 45 minutes. And you're going to take their nappy off. You're going to have them in panties now. No more nappy. Nappy's gone. And then the minute you see that kind of pause in their play, or that kind of signal that they might need it, or they might come and tell you, you're going to whisk them off to the toilet. And if they haven't shown you that within 45 minutes since the last time they went, you're going to give them the opportunity. You're going to say, come, we're just going to pop off to the toilet. And you're going to give them the opportunity to go and wee. And you're going to do that like a religion. Every 45 minutes, every signal, you're going to catch it. And it's going to be hard work from day 4 to 7, but you're going to get it right, because they're going to really start to pattern it in. So first 3 days, nappy off, lots of prep. Next 4 to 10 days, kind of really, really working on getting them to know that they need to go to the toilet now, and patterning it. And remember, every single time that they do the little wee-wee, you're going to give them a lovely reward. Okay, and if they do a poo, even more so. So that is it in a nutshell. It is not as complicated as we think it is. So we're going to watch for signals and know the right time. We're going to set up the space. We're going to have the period of time in which they are wandering around without a nappy on. You're going to give them lots of opportunity, lots of words to be able to know that this is what is happening. And then you're going to take them again and again and again repetitively. And I can absolutely assure you that they are going to then be able to be potty train quite quickly. Now, a few little troubleshooting things. What about when we go out? So when you go out, you can put a nappy back on for traveling in the car seat, because obviously you don't want mistakes in the car seat. But when you arrive somewhere, you can take off the nappy and pop on the training shorts or the little training pants, and you can take them off to the toilet, every 45 minutes in the outing as well. So that's one piece of troubleshooting. Another piece of troubleshooting, the questions that I often get is, how does this differ from wees to poos? So this principles I've given you here is very much for wees, and poos are hyper variable. So you'll get some little ones who do the poo just like they do the wee, and particularly your sensitive and your slow to warm up little ones. The minute they feel the poo coming, they're going to give you a signal like, I need to go to the toilet. And so they're going to be quite easy to potty train for poos. Then there are going to be other ones who need to feel that security around their waist and around their tummy in order to make a poo. And every time they're going to make a poo, they're going to come back to you and say, I need to have my nappy put on. Now, if that is your little one, do not worry. It really isn't a major thing. Just be relaxed, put the nappy on. And every time they go to the toilet, do offer them the opportunity to poo. Or if you can see that they need to poo, first offer them the opportunity to poo. But if they're stuck on using nappies, don't worry about it. It tends to pass by 4 years of age. So between 2 and 4, many of them go through that stage. And it's not a problem. Don't make a scene about it. Never punish your child for anything around potty training. Not if they make a mistake or if they want to poo in their nappy or whatever it is. Really, really just encourage them and be positive around it. And then one of the other things that often comes up is, what about nighttime? So for night times, I do recommend putting the nappy back on. So potty train them for day first, and then later on come back to nighttime. And it often is that they take a little bit more time to come to nighttime. And the signals that you're looking for is that they are actually stretching for a long stretch without making wee at night. And quite interestingly, we actually have a neurotransmitter that turns off wee at nighttime. So babies do start to be able to stretch through the night. Another little tip for nighttime is that as you go to bed, just quickly take them off to the toilet, so they do have the opportunity to then go and empty their bladder and then put them back to sleep. So you can do that one change in the middle of the night. Finally, also for nighttime, stop offering them water from about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, so that they do have the opportunity to actually empty their bladder before they go to bed and then not produce more urine at night. So there you have it. Quite simple, quite direct. You're going to watch for your baby's sensory personality. You're going to adjust the way in which they potty train according to their sensory personality. And it's really worth going and looking inside the app for the sensory personality course, because that'll be super helpful. And there's a booklet that goes with it. Right, so there you have it, potty training in just 2 weeks. And it's really only 1 week of intense potty training. So good luck, and just remember that you've got this.
Thank you for joining me today. I hope today's conversation brought you a little more clarity, calm, and confidence on your parenting journey. If you enjoyed the episode, please do share it with a friend who needs to hear it today. And also go and subscribe to the podcast so you never miss out on an episode. I'll be back next week with another episode, same time, same place, and always here to support you. And in the meantime, download the Parent Sense app to take the guesswork out of feeding, sleep, weaning, routines, and everything in between.